What's up, Weirdo Swarm? Thank you for listening to another episode of Podagon Infinity, the podcast that opens the door to all things King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. My name is Spenser, and usually I'm joined by my buddy Joe. In fact, his voice is usually the first voice that you hear in this intro. Joe is out and about today, so he won't be here on this episode, but don't worry, he will be back for the next one. As many of you may know from our posts on social media, we took a short break from recording there for a couple of weeks and ended up switching up a couple of things as far as recording and release schedule, so that brings us to this here solo mini-sode with yours truly. I want to begin this mini-sode with a short story that ties directly into today's topic. Last winter, my wife and I attended a friend's wedding about an hour away from where we live. She was in the wedding and had some stuff to help out with the day before, so we drove separately just because logistically it made sense. This, of course, meant that I was free to curate my very own playlist for the hour-long drive. By that time, I'd listened to the November 2024 San Francisco Rave show a couple of times, and I really enjoyed it.
Give it up for the Rave band!
And I was feeling full of energy and excitement for that weekend's events, the weekend of this wedding, and so I figured I'd give that San Francisco Rave show a full, uninterrupted spin as I drove. So I hit play, I hit the road, and as the sunset gave way to dark skies, I rolled through these scenic, wooded New Jersey back roads, and I was in the zone. I'd cranked the volume higher than usual, not ear-splittingly loud, but loud enough so that evidently one could hear the music from outside my car through the closed windows. And I say this because once I arrived at the hotel where we were staying, my wife met me in the parking lot and asked, "What, are you having a rave in there or something?" And without hesitation, I said, yes, I am. My point being, between this specific live show recording, the synth portions of the band's many live shows the past couple of years, and their studio release of the Silver Cord, both the standard and extended versions, I was falling in love with this side of King Giz at that point. So, for a little bit of personal background, I was never a rave kid. I didn't mind electronic music, but I never actively sought it out either beyond kind of the mass appeal stuff in the 2010s like Avicii or what have you, and some older stuff like Kraftwerk. But this electronic, rave, aspiring side of King Gizzard had a chokehold on me around this time last year, so the only question at that time was, is this actually going to become a bigger thing for the band? And well, now here in November of 2025, we have our answer, of course, between this current leg of the 2025 tour and the possible, rumored upcoming studio album. King Giz are officially in their rave era. Now, mixed messages, mixed reactions, I guess, online, whether from those of you who have interacted with us here on the show through social media, or some of you on the subreddit maybe. Some are digging it, some are not. I know some people are not overly enthused about it. Others are just absolutely psyched beyond belief about this chapter in the band's history. And in speaking of that, we're going to get to your messages in just a minute, but I want to add real quickly here that we did, of course, talk about some of this UK Europe tour Joe and I did on our previous episode 36. Check that out if you have not done so already. And we kind of speculated on what the band might play, what was kind of on our wish list, like our top few songs that we really would have liked to hear in electronic form. And fortunately, it's as if the band was listening to several of our requests. So I took the liberty of scribbling down each of our wish lists and listening back to episode 36. Joe threw out several more specific songs that he would like to hear, more than I did. I kept things general, at least at the beginning of that portion of that episode. I said I wanted to hear Butterfly 3000 tracks in general, but Joe got more specific. He narrowed things down. He wanted to hear Dreams, Blue Morpho, and Catching Smoke. Holy crap, Joe. 2 for 3. You got the magic touch, buddy. Dreams and Blue Morpho have indeed been played on the tour already. Catching Smoke, not just yet. Maybe still to come on the rest of the tour, which, in full disclosure, I'm recording this little mini-sode on Friday, November 14th, so I believe 11 dates yet to go. The Copenhagen show is taking place in a couple of hours as I record this mini-sode, so who knows what else will transpire, you know? Going down the rest of the wish list here, I'm looking at Joe's side of the list still. He put down 2 songs from Fishing for Fishies. The title track, obviously, that's a given. We wanted it. We both wanted it. It happened. Hallelujah, finally. But Acarine and Psy Boogie were a couple of songs that he listed out as well. Acarine, nope. Psy Boogie, yeah. Almost a 6-year absence from live shows for Giz, so glad to see them bring that one back. Superposition, Joe also requested. Ding, ding, frickin' ding. He got that one as well. Joe, your batting average is like Hall of Fame caliber here, dude. Motor Spirit and Witchcraft he requested on the metal side. Neither of those has happened, and actually, a little regression to the mean here. Joe's in a little bit of a slump, scrubbing down the rest of his wish list here. He also requested Superbug, Great Chain of Being, Tezita, Spider and Me, The Book, and Trapdoor. And to be fair, some of these are more theorizing like, oh, this could sound good. It's not necessarily, top 5 what I'm dying to hear most, but point being there, none of those other songs that Joe listed off specifically in the previous episode have been played yet live by the band. As far as my side of the wish list, in addition to a general Butterfly 3000 wishing on my side, I specifically asked for and received the Flamethrower outro. I felt for a long time that was a sound that I wanted more of from the band. Just beyond the record, it's just this cool tension-building, synth-propelled piece at the tail end of Petrodragonic Apocalypse, and then Stu's growling vocals coming back in. It was as if, and of course we were none the wiser before the Silver Cord came out, but it was as if it was trying to scream in our face like, hey, synthesizers are what's coming next in the discography, and of course the Silver Cord followed. So Flamethrower outro, another wish answered by the band. Struck out on my last few. Mars for the Rich I was hoping for, hasn't happened yet. God is in the Rhythm and The River, those two would be super cool. God is in the Rhythm, of course, would be the ultimate bust out if the band can finally, please, one day make it happen. And The River, with it being the live show mainstay, it's been played so many times, but as of yet, not in an electronic context, so maybe it could happen. And finally, Gandhi, my final wish that I listed on last episode. Who knows? The band may or may not have rehearsed it some more after a couple of kind of live show snafus with that one. I said on the last episode, it's kind of a monkey on their back. It's kind of an albatross around their neck. They haven't fully gotten it right live quite yet, but there is still time. And to be fair, they're not going to answer all these requests just, okay, check. They're not going to leave themselves with no tricks left up their sleeves. They want to keep the fans wanting more. There are inevitably going to be a few songs that they're going to have to hold on to a little longer just to kind of keep the people champing at the bit, Okay, enough talk about mine, enough talk about mine and Joe's wish list. Let's get on to what you all had to say, whether reactions or hopes or wishes or desires for live shows to come. Let's begin with a couple of Instagram comments, first of which came from Stefan or Stefan A, who says, I've been dying to hear Hell's Itch and Candle's debuts, and while the synth versions were fun and I'm glad they happened, I'm really hoping we get versions closer to the originals in the near future. And that is an absolutely valid point. I think that has probably been the number one objection that I have seen online from people is that, yes, we're getting debuts, quote-unquote debuts of so many of these songs. Fishing for Fishies can be thrown into this category as well, that, not only is it just played on the table, it's just the instrumentation and everything that accompanies the vocals. It is so far removed in most cases from the actual album context, and I don't see that as... I personally, at least, don't see that as a failing or a bad thing on the band's side. They're trying to be creative with it. They're trying to do something different. But I can certainly understand, and I think a little part of me agrees with you too, Stefan, that, it would be cool to see them play it in the electronic context with a melody like instrumentation that comes a little bit closer to reflecting the original studio album context for a lot of these types of songs. So glad that we got Hell's Itch and Candles. Also, I was especially stoked about Candles. In fact, Joe and I talked about that one on our Part 2 Omnium Gatherum discussion episode. Have a listen to that one if you have not done so already. One of those little kind of end-of-album tracks that really gets buried in, gizstery and just kind of gets neglected, doesn't get the attention it deserves for such a simple, beautiful, chill little track. Glad it finally got a moment on the big stage. That was huge. Next comment, also on Instagram, from Mark M, who says, Kepler 22b keeps getting better and better. Smoke and Mirrors was a nice addition in these Europe shows. Hoping to see something totally out of left field like Dripping Tap or a Nonagon song, maybe tonight in Vienna. Pondering face emoji. Spoiler alert for those who didn't keep up with the Vienna show, neither of those happened. Who knows what the future will bring? Mark, I agree that Kepler 22b, as is the case with a lot of the songs that are electronic in their original form, just really keeps on getting better. I think that explains also a lot of the backlash against the Silver Chord when that album first came out. That was probably one of the more polarizing releases in the recent discography for King Gizzard. And it's so cool to see so many people being won over by these live versions of, the Silver Chord songs, Kepler 22b, and as Mark mentioned here, also Smoke and Mirrors. Where the hell will they go next? We will find out later. Thank you, Mark, for writing in. A brief Instagram DM from Pat Raps, who says, the throat singing in Magenta Mountain and Perihelion in Vienna was peak. Also love the breakbeat drumming in 2.02 Killer Year from the same show. Yeah, I was listening to that show during work the other day, and that was pretty sick. And Pat follows up with an additional message saying, also, not sure if you've seen this post yet, but the community has finally acquired this sheet from their table. It's a pretty solid insight into who is doing what on each song, at least for this show, London Night 2. Cheers, friend. And Pat includes a link to the KGATLW subreddit post in question where there's a picture of said sheet, and it shows kind of the schematics of what each member of the band is doing during these rave sets, or at least a portion of it. And I suspect that people who use Ableton for their music projects or whatever, I'm not among them. So those of you who do might be a little more informed as to what's going on in this picture or what one can see in this picture. So check it out. I'll drop the link in the show notes for your enjoyment if you're interested in that. Also, speaking of links in the show notes, there's another one I want to share, if I may just step away from listener messages for a minute. Something interesting I stumbled across on the subreddit is a post by user recent_entertainer30, who asks in all caps, how does Nathan work? With 5 question marks. Well, kudos to user Magical Pedro, who responds with a detailed yet not too deeply into the weeds 4-paragraph explanation of the inner workings of Nathan. So it really puts things into basic, simple terms without getting too knee-deep in jargon or anything like that. So really kind of the average bear such as myself when it comes to gear and inner workings of equipment can understand basically what's going on when the band is jamming out on Nathan. So I will drop the link in the show notes to that post as well. Okay, back to listener messages right now. We also got an email from Bray, who says, hey guys, I just got back from Europe. I attended the Tilburg, Berlin, Prague, and Vienna rave shows. Holy crap. As well as the Den Bosch Orchestra show. That's in the Netherlands. The rave sets were ridiculous. It seemed like the band was having a ton of fun performing, and the crowds were feeding off that energy. I really hope they'll decide to do a few rave sets in the US sometime in 2026. Fully agreed. Here are my favorite songs from each set. Tilburg, Muddy Water. Berlin, Kepler 22b. Prague, Thea. Vienna, The Silver Chord. The best performance of this song I've ever heard. I saw the stream went down, but hopefully they have it recorded for the eventual bootleg release. I think that probably is the case, I would trust. Back to Bray here. I was a little bummed that they repeated a handful of the songs, but it seemed like that helped them make the jams better. For example, Perihelion was great that first time they played it, but it was so much better in Vienna. I wish I could have attended these final 2 rave shows in Copenhagen and Gothenburg. Bray. Thank you, Bray, for writing in. Appreciate the email. We have another email of yours that we will get to on the next episode once Joe is back. So, cool stuff. Glad to talk to someone who not only spent some time in Europe for a rave show, but for 4 rave shows. That is so, so cool, as well as as you said, the Den Bosch Orchestra show. So cool. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And I think the Silver Chord, the title track, that's probably the song that I've had the biggest and highest hopes for personally in terms of continued growth and development off the Silver Chord album, because, and I think somebody made this case probably on the subreddit that I read in passing somewhere, but I think the song off of the Silver Cord that came the closest to what the band was trying to achieve in terms of trying to create that rave feel, that the extended version of the Silver Cord title track probably came closest out of all the 7 tracks on that studio album. So, and I think that just adds an additional little bit of excitement, like, okay, this is going to be kind of an anchor. This is going to be kind of a mainstay, the Silver Cord title track will be for a lot of these rave sets. And I actually, full disclosure, I'm such a dork here. I have just so many 3x5 cards and sticky notes in front of me on the desk as I record this episode, including scribbling out the full set lists for a lot of these shows, just so I kind of have the visual in front of me without having to scroll on the web page. Just a visual aid that was kind of working for me in the moment. Of course, shout out to kglw.net. They had all the information there at my fingertips. I was able to access easily and jot down any special notes and whatnot. But yeah, they're sticking still to the no repeats rule. They're not going from one city to the next night and playing one of the same songs over, except in the case of going from a rave to an orchestra set where there I think has been an exception. So yeah, okay. One more message, and it comes from an Instagram DM from our good buddy Matt from Wales. Good to hear from you, Matt, who says, "Morning, guys. Just going to share some thoughts about the tour. It has been great so far. The contrast between the show types really provides a great variety of vibes, as did rock shows compared to acoustic shows. The orchestra show in London Royal Albert Hall sounded amazing and really was a special night, but the rave sets absolutely blow it out of the water. I do encourage everyone to go to one of their orchestra shows, but there isn't much of a need to go to more than one unless you specifically want to hear Phantom Island in full again. However, you really don't know what's going to happen at a rave show. We knew it was coming. In the summer tour, I heard table versions of Hot Water and Sense, so we had an idea going into it that everything was on the table. Pun intended. In Berlin specifically, we had Perihelion, Hell's Itch, and Slow Jam as table songs. Hell's Itch was close to perfection, with the first 2 minutes being very ambient sounding, while Stu jammed the electric flute. We impulsively booked tickets for Sweden as we were flying out to Berlin, and in hindsight, it was a brilliant decision because, yes, I absolutely want to do that again. To finish off, I will give you my rankings of show types, the ones I've attended anyway. Number 1, rock shows. Number 2, rave shows. Number 3, acoustic shows. Number 4, orchestra shows. That's not to take anything away from the orchestra shows at all, but the energy in the rave really does rival the rock shows, and I think most of us come to watch Giz specifically for their energetic performances. You certainly get energy at the rave shows. The boys are improving with drops and timings every show. I really hope the Podagon team get a chance at going to a rave show next year, and I think it's likely one of the nights at Field Division 2.0 will probably be a rave night. Sending love from Wales, as usual, Matt. Thank you so much, Matt, for your detailed insights and reflections. Love it. And again, I'm so appreciative of you guys who have attended so many of these shows in person, including some fellow Americans going all the way across the pond. Super cool experience. That's definitely on my bucket list. I'm sure I can probably very fairly speak for Joe in his absence that he would say the same thing. So cool. Thank you. Glad to read all these messages here on the show. Again, we have a couple of other messages to get to that are not specific to this episode's prompt, so we will read those on our next episode. Once again, this is a mini-sode, so the flow of things are going to move a little bit quicker than usual here, but I want to kind of start to bring things, kind of funnel things closer to the finish here. We still have a little bit to go, but I want to just kind of give some hard stats now to this point of the tour and reflect on the fact that we have had 4 debuts off of Butterfly 3000 alone, those being Dreams, Blue Morpho, 2.0 Killer Year, and Butterfly 3000, the title track. That makes it 6 of the 10 songs on that album now played live. Still no live plays for Yours, Catching Smoke, Black Hot Soup, and You Love. I'm sure 1 or 2 of those might come in the days to come on the remaining dates of the tour, because there still is plenty of time for them to play around with things. Lots and lots of overall debuts for various songs by the band here on this leg of the tour. The aforementioned 2.02 Killer Year, Blue Morpho, Butterfly 3000, and Dreams. That's 4, as I said, off Butterfly 3000 already, as well as Hell's Itch, Fishing for Fishies, and Candles. That's 7. And to make it the total 9, we saw earlier on this tour the debuts of songs that are being called Joe Jam and Lusek. I don't know how people are actually verbally pronouncing it, but 5 letters each, all caps, Joe Jam, presumably referring to Joey, with that being maybe a kind of his baby in the studio playing around with this particular jam, and Lusek, whatever, Luseq. We only know these because they were on the typed set lists that were given out at the end of the night, and I think that latter one probably refers to Lucas sequence, I would imagine, on Nathan the Table. Whether or not these are going to be a part of the eventual possible studio album number 28 as tracks on that, who knows? Or they're just like kind of live projects that'll make their rounds at all the live shows but may never see the light of day on a studio album. Who knows? Who's to say? We'll find out, I'm sure. But in the meantime, I kind of have this loose theory that this next Rave album, this next electronic album for the band is going to be all 5-letter titles like Joe Jam and Lusek. I would be ecstatic to see what else could come of that and what jumbles of letters and combinations of syllables could come out of something like that, if that were indeed to be what happened. So those are the overall debuts, 9 of them. It has been so cool to see what is debuted, what they've shoehorned onto table form. Regrettably, I haven't been able to keep up with the live streams very much as I would like on this tour. This little thing called work gets in the way, sadly. The good news is I did get to listen to almost the entirety of the Vienna show the other day, Wednesday at work, and kind of the waning hours and minutes of my workday. I was jamming along pretty hard to what they were playing at that show. Unfortunately, the stream did go down, as somebody alluded to earlier in the listener messages we were reading, but hopefully they were able to salvage the rest of the audio, at least, for the eventual placement of that live show on all the listening platforms in the future. Finally, some electronic debuts differing from overall debuts in that they've been played live before, but just not in electronic context. Muddy Water, Magma, Perihelion, Ice 5, and Bitter Boogie. A couple of overlooked ones there on mine and Joe's parts. Bitter Boogie and Perihelion. I know Joe wished for a couple of metal songs in particular in electronic form. Those were cool and unexpected, I think pretty firmly in the unexpected category, in fact, as well as Muddy Water. I think anything off of Gumboot making a surprise appearance is super cool. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have in terms of just like hard stats and drier breakdown. It will be interesting to see how these live stats and all these numbers and tallies of what's being played when and what's being played how frequently. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to develop through the remainder of the tour, which I already said there are 11 dates remaining on the tour. Tonight, November the 14th in Copenhagen, Denmark. Tomorrow in Gothenburg, Sweden. And then the band moves on, finally, bringing it on home to their native Australia. A few dates in Sydney, a few dates in Brisbane, and then 2 shows in Melbourne, their home city. Those final 2 dates in Europe, by the way, this weekend are both rave sets. They are actually the final rave sets of this tour. And then once they head on home to Australia, it's going to be all rock or orchestra. And just to highlight, which I think are probably going to be some of the most exciting dates for the band from their point of view, just being back home sweet home in Melbourne, December 12th and 13th. Those are the final 2 dates of the tour, both taking place at the Sydney Meyer Music Bowl in Melbourne, the first of which is going to be the orchestral show with Orchestra Victoria, and then the rock show the following night at the same venue. So guys, 2025 tour, so exciting. It's been so much fun. Couch tour for the win. It would be just so cool if I or Joe could have taken part in one of these dates. Not on the cards, unfortunately, for either of us, but again, it just makes us that much more grateful for a band with a crew who works so hard to put these live streams together for free on YouTube, and then you, the community, just sharing all the screenshots on social media and everything and seeing all of your reactions. Wholesome, beautiful, exciting, love it all. A couple more isolated moments that I want to touch on here, just because I didn't know where else in the episode to put them. Number one, on November the 5th in France, in the band's orchestral set that night, conductor Chad Kelly, who has been traveling with the band for all the orchestral dates on the Europe leg of this year's tour. Chad unfortunately had to step away for a quick bathroom break after Eternal Return, apparently. Thank you again to KGLW.net for the special notations there on that night's set. On one hand, yeah, that's probably a little bit embarrassing to have to just kind of stop in the middle of the set there, but the band picked it up with an impromptu jam, as I understand, and that's like new Fear Unlocked, kind of, but still, shout out to Chad Kelly, hardworking conductor. He's doing a great job. So an interesting moment just that you don't see every day, I guess. Next moment that I wanted to point out was that the very next day, actually, in Tilburg in the Netherlands for the band's Rave set, when a Flight B741 decorated cake was brought out during the performance of Dreams, and during the following performance of Grim Reaper, Ambrose plopped his face right into the cake. That's hilarious, and another one of those beautiful, lighter moments on the tour. And then a couple of songs later during Fishing for Fishies, Cav's got a little crowd surfing it. Love the guy working so hard behind the drum kit night after night. He deserves to have a little fun, little escape like that once in a while. Love these boys so much. You just never know what little fun, memorable moment will happen on any given leg of the tour or on any given night. Okay, that's basically a wrap on the main topic of this episode, and why not? We have a little bit of time. Let's hop on over for a little segment I like to call Most of What We Like.
Most of what we like.
If you know, you know. And for those who don't know, real quick, Most of What We Like is the part of the show that we do not every time, but sometimes when we have time, where we talk about any non-Giz media, whether it be music, other podcasts, books, movies, TV shows, anything not Giz related that we've been enjoying lately. I have but one big thing to share, and that is the fact that I get to see Rush next summer. Friday, August 21st in Philadelphia. My brother's flying out from California to come see him with me. And for those who don't know, Rush recently announced their 50-something tour, basically just alluding to the fact that it's been 50 and counting years since they began. The Canadian power trio obviously lost their longtime, super talented drummer Neil Peart to cancer in early 2020. And in the meantime, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson have remained somewhat active musically with their own respective ventures. I know Geddy's been doing some book tours. He's written a couple of books in the meantime, including his life memoir, My Effin' Life, which I have read for myself. It's a beautiful read. Highly recommend it. Alex Lifeson has been playing guitar for a musical project / group called Envy of None. I've listened to a little bit of their stuff, and they're pretty cool. But the two of them are finally going back on tour. They'll be joined by German drummer Annika Nilles, who I've just watched a couple little video snippets of, and she has got some insane chops behind the drum kit. So, this coming from a kid who at age 13 in 2005 went to his parents' CD rack in the basement at home and found a Rush Greatest Hits CD and thought, I'll give this a try. Why not? Absolutely fell in love. That was history for me as a music fan. They were one of the first bands that I kind of got into on my own, more or less. And if you just told me a few short months ago that Rush, the band, would be reuniting in 2025 with a new drummer to play more live concerts, I would have thought you were insane. I never thought I'd see the day, so I am just absolutely ecstatic to finally get the chance to see Geddy and Alex and to see what Annika Nilles can bring to the table behind them. I guess they're going to be accompanied by keyboardist and maybe a couple of other additional musicians as well to kind of help fill in the gaps. Geddy and Alex are getting a little bit older, but I'm sure they are going to be appreciative of the additional musical support behind them on stage. And that is most of what we like today, most of what I like, with this being a solo mini-sode. Now, as for what's next on Podagon Infinity, yes, you've been champing at the bit, and the majority of you voted. Yes, we are doing Polygon Dwanaland next. It was supposed to be recorded this week and dropping shortly thereafter. We did have a scheduling conflict, so we had to push it back, but it is coming. Joe and I are going to record it very soon. We are a little bit scared. We have some trepidation, but it's time to face our fears. We've been kicking this can down the road for too long. We're going to talk about Polygon Dwanaland in the very next episode. We can't wait to bring it to you, and we promise to do it justice. As always, thank you for listening to Podagon Infinity, and thank you for keeping it weird and doing your part to spread the good word of the Giz. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you in the next episode. Later, Gators! Our special guest today is none other than BB the Droid. BB, what do you have to say about the Giz Rave tour so far? Oh, really? Okay, yeah, that's interesting.